I will be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all of the difference. Buckle up and get ready to ride now, for we are going to journey down the road less traveled. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am your humble host, Mr. Dennis Carroll, and this is episode 26, The Mysteries of Lincoln on the Road Less Traveled. I want to welcome you all here tonight and bring in my other excellent co-host, Mr. Gerald Fountain.
Hi.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
We're ready to plumb the mysteries of Lincoln tonight, huh?
Yeah, I got quite a few pictures to show. I'm sure you probably do too. And having Lincoln came from Illinois, it's right up my home area.
Well, love him or hate him, he was an interesting man, whichever way you want to look at it. He had a lot of interesting things about him, and he lived in a very interesting time. Absolutely.
Right.
And we're gonna get deep into that tonight.
I always thought it fascinating, growing up in Illinois and going through the school system. You heard about the rail
Land.
splitter, splitter Lincoln, the lawyer Lincoln, the guy that used to wrestle.
That's the land of Lincoln, Illinois. I want to welcome everybody in the chat room. It's filling up tonight. We have somebody named Midwest in there. I don't know who that is.
Okay, I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on that.
And we got a Wizard Moon, and Miss Shiro is with us. And hello, dear. And Maria, and Red Pill Preacher, and Urso. And who else we got here? Let's see. We got John Temprine, the girl and her gong. Hello, dear. And let's see who else. We got Dawn Morris. Dawn is with us. Dawn has arrived. Not yet. It's still a good many hours till dawn. Right? And let's see who else we got sneaking in the room here. And coming in here with us, we got Mr. Kyle Smith. Hello, brother. That's my nephew, Kyle Smith, by the way. And Susan. Hello, Susan. Ida. Well, we're getting all the old regulars in here tonight.
Yeah. Starting to fill up.
Yep. So, I want to make a few announcements before we get into our main program tonight. You want to get your popcorn going, okay? Get your popcorn ready out there.
All right.
And your candy bars or whatever. And we'll talk about a few things. Hello, Philip. Good to have you here, Philip. And did an excellent show, a fantastic show with Miss Jessica Jones today on the Cryptid Huntress. So go check that out, and it's also available on my website as well. I mean, my YouTube channel. You can check it out there and go do that because it was an excellent show on one of our favorite topics, of course, Dogman. And also, I hope you got a chance to check out my show with the Duchess, Danielle Diva Borazan. Last Sunday, it was on one. It's also available on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out. We had an excellent interview on that. Part 2 supposedly is coming up this weekend, so be watching for that.
Wow.
And Friday night, I will definitely be doing, this Wednesday night, I will have Brian Minnick from Strange Montauk on the show. Well, that's going to be interesting. And we're gonna get some feedback and some updates from him on that. And Friday night I will be doing some book reviews and some different things Friday night on Paranormal Point of View. Now, Gerald, what are you up to this week?
Oh man, what am I not up to? That's probably an easier list. But we just had Neoma Finn on Sunday on our show. We told some bridge stories and some old folklore and some good stories. So be sure to check that out on Midwest Night Watchers. And last night I was on Brown Dwarf's first live show on his channel. So I was like his first guests. And so we were on there for 2 hours talking UFOs, Bigfoot, growing up, just general chit chat. So that was fun. And then this Sunday, we're going to have Amber from Amber's Paraworld, and we're going to be talking about Appalachian folklore.
That sounds good. Yeah. I also want to, give a shout out to everybody's website. Their channels and all that. Of course, you need to patronize Jessica's channel, Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. Check out her store. She has a store on Etsy. War Woman Goods, perfect place to shop for Gerald's Christmas gift.
Yeah.
Okay, and absolutely. Check that out and show her some love on that. We also want to talk about Beyond the Box, and we also want to talk about, of course, Midwest Night Watchers, the shows he has on there, and he has a store. Is that not correct, Gerald?
Yes, on Printful. Night Watchers at Printful.me. Then you can find our shirts, and all of our shirt I'm wearing tonight is from there. We order our own shirts from our own shop, and we got all kinds of stuff there. So
that's the
I was
link
going
right
to tell
there.
you, Jessica's Etsy shop, she has a lot of turquoise on there, and I love turquoise because my dad used to wear a turquoise wristband for his watch. So I always liked turquoise just because my dad used to wear it.
All right. And, we want to give a shout out to our good friend Barb Hartman. Please go and show some love to her YouTube channel if you get a chance and check that out. And that's the Beyond the Box here that I mentioned earlier. That's the link for them right there coming up. There we go. And StreamYard's old and creaky like me tonight. I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway, that's Beyond the Box, Brenda. And check her channel out. She has some good stuff on there, like me every once in a while. Yeah. And okay, there's Bob Hartman's channel. Here we go. All right. That gunslinger girl on her gong is doing it, and she's knocking it out here. And check that out, please. Barbara is really sweet woman. Check out, of course, don't forget the Cryptid Hunters. I was on there today. Check that out. And let's talk Lincoln here. You ready to go? All right. Well, the interesting thing about Abraham Lincoln to me, and I'm just going off the cuff with it right now. Being a Southerner myself, Lincoln was not a big hero. Okay, he was not as venerated as he was up north. But I think the one thing I've never, and being a student of history, there's one thing I've always thought about, that he was a politician. You never need to lose sight of that. And that, I'll leave that there for everybody else to think about. He was a politician, okay? I know he was a president, but I want to tell you the thing that fascinates me most about Lincoln is the fact of he and his wife both were deep into paranormal stuff. And they were, we're going to talk about that tonight a little bit. He had some interesting experiences along those same lines, especially Mary Todd Lincoln. She was big on seances. Okay. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that, but that's my general interest in it. Well, let's see what's your take on that, Gerald?
Well, growing up in Illinois my whole life, we learned a lot about Lincoln in schools, and through my whole life there's always been stuff going on about Lincoln. I visited the house that he used to walk to from his cabin, and he used to walk to a prominent lawyer's house in Bloomington, Illinois, and they actually have that as you can walk in and check it out. And so it's kind of cool that you get to go there and stand on the porch where Lincoln used to sit and talk to the judge and the lawyer there. And I mean, Lincoln was all over Illinois. He was up here in our area, and he was in Decatur. He was in Streator, Illinois. He was, Ottawa, Illinois. He had a big debate in Ottawa with one of the senators, Douglas.
Yeah.
But I mean, growing up, we learned about him being a rail splitter and a wrestler. Then he went to the judge's house to get law books, and that's how he became a lawyer, is studying through him. And then he became a president, and the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War. I mean, the assassination. I mean, how much bigger of a life can you have? I mean, as far as somebody that's lived in Illinois our whole lives, it was amazing.
It's very interesting. That's the history that we know about. But tonight we're going to go a little bit deeper into some of the unknown things about Lincoln and some of the offbeat, strange things that connected with him too. A lot, and a lot about his death.
Right.
And some of the stuff connected with that. Absolutely, there's some very bizarre, strange, and kind of macabre type stuff. When you look into the deeper aspect, I mean, we're looking behind the history. What's taught, in the history books. There's a lot more behind that stuff on every subject, not just Lincoln, whatever it may be. There's what I like to call it the untold history, that you don't hear that much about. And that's what we're interested in tonight, definitely. And I think we've got a lot of data on that. That we can go with, but I think one of the most interesting aspects of Lincoln was at his death,
right.
How much he was so commemorated. You had the funeral train, you had them lying in state for so long. He stayed out actually longer than most prominent figures at that time, or to this day, have stayed out in what we call, in the funeral terms, body review. Right. What do you think about that, Gerald?
From the time he was assassinated or shot at Ford's Theater, and by the time he was actually entombed in Springfield, Illinois, it was 3 weeks. If you can imagine.
There, like the story about his, they were trying to actually steal his body.
Yeah, that's a great story. We'll have to get into that. That's a really good story.
There was a plot. There was a plot to do that, supposedly. And wasn't his body hidden for a while in somebody's cellar or basement?
Actually, he was moved 17 times before he was in his final resting place, believe it or not. And the one time that they moved him to a basement or a cellar, as you said, but a basement there at the cemetery in one of the buildings, and they piled a bunch of old wood boards and stuff over top of it so nobody would know that that's what it was. And the people that helped, there was 5 guys, I believe, that helped get that into the basement, and they were sworn to secrecy their whole life.
That is very interesting. And that, so he would have probably been a lot longer before he was truly entombed, right?
Yeah, it was like 11 years before he was in his final resting place.
That is strange. And here's another interesting thing, that they said that before they buried him for the final time, which now he lies under something like 16 feet of concrete. There ain't no way you're going to steal that body, okay? It would be almost impossible to do. But before he was buried the last time, they actually opened his coffin and looked at him one final time. And they said that he had not decayed very much at all in that year's time. So that sort of, was sort of the prize for his embalmers. They did the right stuff, evidently, um, in that respect. But I heard that, and you can back me up on this, whether it's true or not, that during the funeral train entourage, that they had to bring in gallons of scent to try to mask some of the odor,
Yes.
uh, because he was decaying supposedly a little bit. And I think it might have had something to do with the weather too. It might have been kind of hot and humid
Well,
or whatever.
if you can
And but
imagine,
here's the interesting thing about that girl is supposedly this ghost train is seen to this day or heard in certain parts of Illinois. Is that true?
yes, there's reports of the ghost train coming, and I think I have I don't know if I uploaded it or not, but I got a picture of the train schedule of the towns that he went through Illinois. He went through 400 cities from Washington D.C. all the way to Springfield, Illinois, in 7 states with that train.
Let's see. I was just looking at head trips. It makes you wonder if it's bones and skull, and I like bones and skull kind of thing. No, I'm afraid Lincoln is probably where he's supposed to be because they made sure of that. Uh, I would think so, very much. And like I said, he lies under 16 feet of concrete.
Yeah, no, not only was he encased in concrete, but the memorial stone on top of his grave weighs 5 tons.
Oh yeah, he's very permanent thing, definitely. Um, but yeah, I find that interesting, that ghost train thing, because you still to this day hear people hearing the train whistle. You know, supposedly not maybe not seeing the train, but they hear the whistle.
Right.
You know, and they said it was, and what it was a special whistle because they would blow a long, horn. They call it the long horn. They blow
Right.
it long. They would lay down on it. It was very long, and it was described. I think the famous writer, I want to say Walt Whitman, somebody described it as being a very mournful sound. You know, from that train. But
Yeah. I mean, there's
yeah,
so many reports. I mean, not only Lincoln's train, but other ghost trains, they come in different aspects. Like you said, you can kind of hear the whistle and the noise of a train in some instances you see the light, like coming down the tracks, but then when it gets there, there's no train, no light, no nothing. But I mean, we hear we live close to a train track, and we hear the trains come up and down, and once in a while it's like, oh, I wonder if that's a ghost train. So I have to get up and look out the window to see if there's actually a train there.
it is interesting. Yeah, definitely. I would love to experience that. Absolutely. That would be interesting to hear something like that. And there have been in history, Joel, a lot of plots to steal famous people's bones and bodies. There was, I think, a plot to steal George Washington's body. There was an actual plot to. They actually, I think, were uh, were able to do it to a certain extent to steal Shakespeare's bones. As a matter of fact, which is why Shakespeare has a curse on his tombstone. It says, cursed is he who disturbs these bones. Uh, that they were actually, I think, removed the bones of Shakespeare, but they didn't make it out of the mausoleum with him. Okay,
Right.
something like that. But
They
there's been a lot of plots, back in history to steal because they could mainly hold stuff like that for ransom. You know. So here's the weird thing about it: you can be kidnapped even after death for ransom. That's interesting to think about. Um, but of course, you talk about the skull and bones, which was mentioned in the chat room just a little while ago, and that's supposed to be Geronimo's skull, by the way. That they made the vows and stuff on the skull and bones
right.
thing, um, fraternity or whatever you want to call it, the group. Uh, there's supposed to be some famous people who were in part of that fraternity. But anyway, there, and I've talked about this before, and I won't go into it tonight because this is a show for another time. But there are people you can hire if you want, like, Marilyn Monroe's hand or skeleton or something, I'm just using that as an example. Okay. If you wanted that, you could hire somebody to get it for you. There are people who will do it. Of course, as you and I know, Gerald, you can get anything if you got enough money, no matter
That's
what it
right.
is. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, should we start with the grave robbers of Lincoln, or you want to start somewhere else?
Yeah, I think some of the they were actually sort of tricked into giving themselves away. I think eventually, but their plans were actually they never actually got a hold of the body or anything, but plans were underway to do that. And I think that they were infiltrated, if I'm not mistaken, by like the Secret Service or something. And they never were like they never got to the point where they actually got the body. You know what I'm saying? Or actually, the body was never in jeopardy to per se to that extent where they were handling it or anything. But it got very close. I heard, to that, but they never allowed it to go completely through with it. But I think that's when they arrested them. I forget how many people there were supposedly involved in it. Um, but it was just mainly they were just going to steal. They didn't care about the history of Lincoln or what. They just wanted to make some money off of it. That was the
Right.
main thing. But that's bad to think about, Gerald. Even in death, you're subject to kidnapping. You know, that's bad to think about.
Well, I can tell you the version that I have of the grave robbery if you'd like to hear it, or if anybody would.
Yeah.
So Lincoln has passed, and he's in his temporary spot because we all know he got moved, like we said before, and the big Irish mobster from Chicago, the Big Jim Kinley, I believe was his name. His number one counterfeiter got arrested and was in prison. He was in Joliet. Well, the bosses came up with a plan on, well, we can influence the governor of the state of Illinois in that by kidnapping Lincoln's body and holding it for ransom, and they were going to take it out to the Indiana dunes and do the swap with them for $200,000, which I believe they said it's like $5 million today or something like that. But $200,000 back in 1871 or 76, 1876. So Lincoln has already been dead for a while. And so they come up with this plan, and they got two people out of the organization. One of them's a saloon keeper that's under the mob, and another one's just a guy that does little nickel and dime stuff for the mob. So they were going to have those two heist Lincoln's body out of the tomb, and then come to find out that they weren't very adept or very good at grave robbery because they've never done it before. So they go out and search for somebody to help with the robbery, and then that's when they got that Lewis Swiggle, which happened to be an informant for the Secret Service in Chicago. So they actually got the Secret Service guy in there to help them. And they get there, and the gate's locked, and they didn't have no tools. They didn't bring any tools with to open the lock, so they had to fumble around with that for a long time. I guess it was like a Keystone Cop kind of deal. I mean, they just took forever, and everything went wrong. They got inside finally, and they get ready, and there's a 500-pound capstone of concrete on top of the sarcophagus where the coffin is, and they could barely even move that. Those guys. So then Swiggle tipped off the Secret Service. He gave his little signal, and they all rushed in. Well, the two guys, the two inept grave robbers, got away. They ended up vanishing. Well, guess where they went? They went back to that guy's saloon that he ran and stayed there for a couple of days, and the Secret Services came in and arrested him.
Yeah, sound like they were a bunch of inept people, definitely. I wonder if one of them was named Joliet Jake.
Oh yeah, the Blues Brothers.
Like the Blues Brothers. But anyway, Head Trip wants to know, was Lincoln a Mason?
I do not know that.
I
It
don't
would
know.
not surprise me, but I don't know that because
I
there was
don't
a lot
know.
of presidents that were in the Masons.
I don't remember ever hearing of him being a Mason. He may have been, but he was a lawyer, and a lot of lawyers are Masons, you know.
A lot of presidents became Masons or were Masons. You know, starting with the founding fathers. I mean,
Well, you know, a lot of things that go on in Washington to this day have the Masonic involvement with a lot of things. A lot of presidents were, you know, in the Masonic, had the Masonic rights and all that stuff. And of course, you know, Washington, the city of Washington, is laid out sort of in Masonic terms. And that's a whole nother show for another time. But there is a lot of influence down through history from the Masons, and it kind of bothers me for the fact that they were able to influence and be involved in so many different things over so much of our history that they are the really ultimate, if you want to look at it that way, the ultimate secret society that is, you know. And here's the thing about it, and what a lot of people have told me, I'm not a Mason, so I can't tell you for sure one way or the other. But they say there are two masonry groups. The public that you see, that a lot, like I think like 90% of the members are truly in, and then there is the hidden Masonic temple behind that only a few of the initiates know, and that is the true secret society. I don't know. That's what goes with that. But you have to wonder about those things. But there are a lot of politicians involved in that. Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's just like you said. I think the organizations that we see out in the public, whichever secret society you want to talk about, they act like they do good, and I think that the members are actually pretty decent people, businessmen, leaders of the communities, but the people that they answer to and a little bit higher than that, depending on how high you go up, are the ones that you have to worry about.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I was going to just mention to everyone, you know, if you have any questions, please put them in upper caps there. Okay, so we can spot them easier. Thank you. But yeah, you know, it's very interesting. Lincoln was a different individual on many different levels. There were different, what am I going to say, characterizations about him that, you know, on one hand, you had the homespun kind of guy, you know, that split rails. Then you had the lawyer, and then you had the politician himself. He was a very different, faceted man in many different ways. So it's kind of hard to pin down the true Lincoln. You know what I'm saying? To
Right.
really say, oh, he was this or he was that, when he was so many different things in that respect. You know, um, I think when you deal with a historical figure like that, you still search for answers and try to understand. It's an ongoing thing of understanding. But like now, when I mentioned about him and his wife got him involved in a lot of that paranormal stuff with the seances and all that they were going through, and because the spiritual movement was just beginning at that time to a certain extent, and it actually had actually come over from England to this country at that time, and she became involved in it simply because they had young children that died, and she wanted desperately, I think, to contact them or find out more about what was on the other side of our existence. She was searching for answers in that respect, you know,
Right.
and I find it very strange that she didn't turn to religion for a lot of that, for those answers. She turned to spiritualism more. Um, that was fascinating, you know. But Mary Todd Lincoln was a very unique person in many ways too. Um, like most of her family fought for the South. By the way, that was the interesting thing about that too. But she got him involved, and of course, wives and husbands do that to this day. Okay, the wife wants you to do something. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Okay, so that happens a lot, and I can see where that was coming from. Okay, absolutely, you got to keep the little lady happy, and he was doing that, I think. But I think once he got into it, it kind of hooks in him too a little bit. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, this was the right time and place where the spiritualism and stuff was coming into the US, and they were holding seances and all that stuff. And like you said, with the passing of their child, I mean, at a young age like that, and they were trying to contact them, just like the Houdini story, I'll come back and I'll give you a word or whatever. They're trying to hold sciences to talk to them. And I can see that happening, especially when everybody, that was like the fad or the new thing where everybody was getting into I don't know if you want to call them dark sciences, but into that kind of stuff.
Especially with the upper crust society. You know what I mean? I think it was more popular with them than it say those people living in farmhouses and stuff.
I
Maybe
mean,
that came later. Okay,
yeah,
but
but you like you just said, the high society people, they would have big parties where they would have seances and bring in mediums and channelers, and of course, a lot of them were all snake oil salesmen. But
I tell you, I make a confession. Back in my younger days, I held a few of my own seance uh, stuff, so I know how that went, and it could be sort of addictive in some ways. I'm sure, especially when you're seeking for answers, especially if it's of a bereavement or something like that. I can understand, but the interesting thing is what happened with Lincoln when he had a vision. And this, I don't see how else you would term it. It would be a vision of his own death. He had the dream, supposedly. He lay down on the couch one night, and it was during the war, and he had a lot on his mind, a lot was going on. And he took a nap. I guess he needed a nap, I think it was. And so he kind of took a power nap. And while he was asleep, he had a dream that he woke up. In the dream, he woke up, okay, from the thing. And that's what it makes it make me think this is a vision more than a dream kind of thing, okay. But anyway, he said he woke up to the sound of weeping, crying. And he went to the door and opened the door, and there was a soldier standing there, a soldier in full dress uniform. And the soldier was standing outside his door, and said the soldier had a sorrowful look on his face. And he asked the soldier, "What's wrong? What's happened? What's going on?" Because he could hear people crying. And the soldier says, "Well, sir, the president's been assassinated."
oh,
And that's when he woke up, supposedly woke up from this or came to himself, and he saw a foretelling of his own death, because it was not very long after that there was real crying and weeping in the White House. The very same way that he supposedly heard this. He told this story, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I know he told it to his wife, but I think he told it to the Secretary of War as well. I can't remember his name. That he told him, and he's the one that related this after Lincoln's death. So, well, Lincoln's on his own death. That's very strange. I know you're familiar with this story, aren't you, Joe?
oh yes, I've heard that. And also, you got to think about that the Lincoln Room in the White House is haunted.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of people say they have had knocks on the door. They would be sleeping in the Lincoln bedroom. Well, I don't think they sleep in but I don't think they're allowed to do that anymore. But
No,
there were
not
some
anymore.
people who in the past slept in the bedroom, and
I
they
think
got a
maybe
knock
special
on the door
guests get to.
now. Yeah. That's interesting. They would go to the door, and he was standing at the door. You know, that his ghost supposedly still haunts him. And the interesting thing about he died in the White House. I mean, while he was in the White House, that would be, I guess, an opportune place for you to haunt. After that, but he had so much trauma that happened there, so
Right.
many memories, so much stuff that and he died with unfinished business to that extent. So that is the perfect formula for a haunting. You know.
Yep, absolutely. And then
Yep.
I remember talking to you and reading that he might have had connection to your distant relatives while he was in the White House.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true.
He,
Absolutely.
he was advised during the Civil War on how to handle illegal situations on the Washington front there with the lady of it would have been the daughter of the Congressman Carroll. I think he was a congressman from West Virginia, a representative. His
Oh yeah.
daughter had a really good legal mind and advised Lincoln under the table, kind of off to the side without anybody really knowing it. And she was writing all the briefs and all of his statements for him in the legal department.
Yeah, I remember hearing about her. Yeah. Um,
So she was a
that's interesting.
Carroll.
Yeah. Very interesting. I have to look some more of that up. Anyway, the interesting thing about Lincoln's death, and it was so very dramatic in the way that they took him across the street and he died in that in the house. He lingered a while before he died. Actually, was declared dead. Um, that house still exists, by the way. You can go there and see it. I think
Yeah, I
the
got
room he
pictures of
died
it.
in. And uh, I think afterwards there were some photographers who wanted to take some pictures of Lincoln, supposedly in his coffin. And I think the Secretary of War nixed that. He said, no, no, no. So all it was daguerreotypes back then that they used. He said, break them all. They're made out of glass, by the way. Break them all, destroy them all. We will not have any of that, any of that left as a record of this horrible thing. Um, but supposedly, some of those photographs still exist, and we're going to be showing some of those tonight. But um, that's interesting, that they would try to shut down that part of history. It makes me wonder why you would do that. I know you feel bad about the people and all that, but he was a man of history. He
Right.
was a historical figure. Why destroy the documentation on stuff like that? So that
I
I think is also why they did the death mask. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I have a picture of the death mask too, but I think it was out of respect. And since it was such a gruesome murder, assassination, shot to the head, maybe they didn't want, those kind of pictures or out in the public. So I don't know, because during that time it was quite common to take pictures of people in coffins or even with family members that had passed. You would take you take your picture with them.
Well, here's the thing about that, Gerald. A few years later, they would be doing post mortem photographs. They would actually go around from town to town and set up dead people and let you take photographs of them with the family. Um, that was a strange era, the Victorian era. It had very different precepts from what we can realize nowadays. But I was going to mention one more thing about Lincoln's murderer, his assassin, John Wilkes Booth, who went in a very dramatic way too. By the way, um, I remember that he supposedly said that while he was dying, he was laying on a farm porch, and he said, he couldn't move his hands; he was paralyzed from the shot, and he said, "Let me see my hands. Let me see my hands." And they lifted his hands up to him, and he said, "Useless, useless," and that was his last words. Um, He was a very interesting character as well. Matter of fact, I went to a theater that he performed at in Charleston, South Carolina. The theater still exists, and you could kind of like feel his presence there. It was kind of bizarre. Um, but they actually weighted his body down in a lead casket and threw it in the Potomac, I think, River, was it?
Yes.
So that nobody could ever access his body. Nobody knows where it is to this day, supposedly. That's bizarre
Or
too.
or is he in an unmarked grave somewhere and they just did that to keep everybody off the trail? Who knows?
Yep. Well, they wanted to do that so that nobody could, ever take his body and commemorate it. Kind of like what happened with Moses in the Bible. The reason that Moses' body was spirited away, supposedly, so that they would not take his body and worship it. You know,
Right.
there were a lot of fanatics around waiting for stuff like that. I could see what they were thinking about when they did stuff like that. But anyway, you got some pictures. You want me to show my pictures first?
Yeah, you can show yours first, and I'll show the ones that I don't have. I'll show the
Okay.
ones that you didn't show.
Alrighty, I got this one. Now I don't know about. I want to ask you about this one. If you know what is this? Who is this? This does not look like Lincoln to me.
Well, supposedly they were saying that's Lincoln, but I think they did a computer analysis of his face, and it turned out to be an actor or another famous person that kind of resembled Lincoln. But there
Okay.
was a story going around that somebody actually really did take a picture of him on his deathbed, but that doesn't look like his deathbed because I have pictures of the actual deathbed, and that doesn't look like the background for it.
I know if the Secretary of War would destroy the other photos, he wouldn't let them do that on the deathbed. Uh, wasn't he like the next in line for the presidency or something after Lincoln was assassinated or something like that? Who?
Yeah, I don't know how
Well,
that
he had
worked.
a lot of power. The Secretary of War was doing a lot of stuff. I don't know. I'm just wondering about that.
I'm
He
assuming
wasn't
he
the
was
next
the
in line.
next
He
in
had to be the
line.
vice president, right?
I'm assuming he was the next in line as far as like the wartime stuff, but as far as presidency, I don't really know. I don't think so.
All right. This was I think, the death mask, right?
Yes. But there was more than one death mask. They made several different copies of it. They had plaster ones, and they had bronze, to make the bronze figures. And so you can see that one doesn't have the beard.
Hmm. Right. That's one without the beard, yeah. But now this one looks more of a true life kind of a thing, don't you think so?
Yeah. And it's, that one's kind of strange too, because they don't really depict hair at
Yeah.
all.
That might, wasn't there one made while he was alive?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I seem to remember hearing something about that. That could possibly be something along those lines. I don't know. That could have been back, before he grew the beard and all that stuff. I don't know.
Well, because sometimes while they're alive, if they make a statue of them, then they will do a face casting for
Yeah.
not, obviously not a death mask, but for a good exact copy of a sculpture.
Now here we have next the one of the supposed to be authentic death shots of him supposedly on the deathbed there or something like that.
I think that one is while he was lying in state, because he stopped off at 13 cities, and they brought his casket out in ceremony and had him lying in state in all these major cities, all the way from Washington to Springfield, Illinois. So that would have been taken during one of the times when he was lying in state in one of these cities. It could have been even Washington, D.C.
Mm. That's probably a different camouflage, as they call it. Uh, Here's another. Now this looks very authentic to me. Now I
Yes,
don't
because
know whether it
that even
really is
looks like his
that.
coffin.
Mm-hmm. But that was supposed to be one of the shots that they didn't want to survive, supposedly. Here's another one. I think we've got. This may be another of him. Can't see lying in state like on the camouflage type thing.
So to
Uh,
to
the
me, that doesn't really look like Lincoln. I know they said it is, but sometimes I look at it and the facial features don't seem quite right, even though he has the beard and
yeah,
the look of Lincoln. I'm having a hard time thinking
I
that's
don't.
actually him.
Just looking at it, Gerald doesn't look like Lincoln to me. I don't know.
Right. That's how I feel.
And look at the hands. The hands are very strange looking. They look like they've got gloves on or something.
I think they do have gloves on them. I don't know why that would be.
But now this looks more authentic too.
Yes, yes.
That's a
That's the
shot further
same
back
casket.
showing the body, the full body. And he was fully body displayed, in other words.
Yeah, so I think that's why he was laying in state. That's probably Washington D.C. or there at the Capitol, and that picture, the casket looks exactly like that close up picture because you can see the little embossed emblems on the side, the ornament.
That is very, very strange looking. Yeah, that looks very authentic to me. I don't know if you could stage something like that. You can, I'm sure, but that looks real to me. I don't know.
But over a
I
three
mean,
week
it just looks. It has a very historical look to it. You know what I mean?
over a 3 week period, they did that in 13 cities, 24 hours at a time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what I've got there, Gerald. I do have one more thing here. That's a quote from Lincoln. Lincoln about what he thought about his actual feelings about black people and how he looked upon it. But like I said, it was during the filter of those times that we see it differently from our historical point of view. But that is one of the reasons why a lot of people recently wanted to destroy some of his statues. Because he didn't fit their criteria. I mean, that's
Right.
the way it goes with historical figures. Absolutely. You got some pictures. That's all the pictures I got here. You
All
got
right.
some you want to
Yeah,
show?
I got a lot of them of his grave site and stuff like that. So I'll bring those up.
Head Trip says Masons put on the gloves and apron. That's possibly, but I don't know if Lincoln was a Mason. I'll have to
I
find that out for
I don't
sure.
really think he was, but I don't know. So this is
Says he may have
supposedly
been decaying. His hands might have been decaying some, but that still does not look like Lincoln to me. I don't know.
no that I don't know. I mean, maybe his body changed while he was decaying, or because
It's
your body does
possibility.
change.
Possibility, yeah.
So this is supposedly one of the pictures of Lincoln's train called the Lincoln Special, and that last car is the one that had the casket in it that they
Right.
made a cross country trip.
Of course, that was the mode of operation back in the day. Then the trains were the big, sort of like our airplanes are today.
Then this is the Peterson house. This is the boarding house that was right across the street from Ford Theater where he was killed, and the gentleman that was a boarder there happened to hear all the commotion in the street, and he looked out his window and he saw them 6 men carrying Lincoln's body. Or at the time, I don't know if he even knew it was Lincoln's body, but they saw him carrying a body. So he ran downstairs, opened the front door that you see there, and told him, bring him in here, bring him in here. So that's how he ended up getting into the Peterson boarding house, because that guy noticed him. Otherwise, I don't know where they were going to take Lincoln's body. Probably anywhere they could, I guess.
Girl or Gong says Lincoln was definitely not a Mason.
Yeah, I don't think he was. I've never read anything saying that he was, but I don't know. I don't think he was.
Amish put their deceased on ice so that the bodies will not decay so fast. Well, of course, they don't have refrigeration and stuff.
So what? This is the same picture that you showed.
Yeah, it's the same one. I think. Yeah. That's a little bit closer shot of it.
Then this is in his final resting place after the grave robbers tried to take him from the other temporary
Mm-hmm.
vault. So this is the 5-ton monument that sits on top of the hymn encased in the concrete in the floor.
Oh yeah.
So that's in Springfield, Illinois. If anybody ever wants to venture to Springfield, and
If you want to steal the body now, good luck to you, right?
oh my gosh, I mean, I can't
Yeah.
even imagine them wanting to move them now. I mean, could you imagine having to move that 5-ton thing plus the concrete plus trying to get in the building to be able to do it?
Well, they actually disinterred Edgar Allan Poe, and this was many years later after he died. And supposedly, I'm just giving you a little post-mortem thing here, okay? The guy picked his skull up, and he heard something rattling around in the skull. So what they say that is a if you have a tumor and it decays with you, it turns to marble like a tumor does. And that's what they said that Edgar Allan Poe actually probably had a brain tumor of some sort. Now that's just conjecture. You can't say that for sure because the body's no longer with us to make an autopsy on. But that is interesting, and for them to say that he was still in relatively good shape a year later, you know,
Right.
that's some good technique for the times I'm talking about. This is what well over 100 years ago that they could do that then. Of course, they can do a lot more now than they did, but that's amazing. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've ever told this online before or not, but growing up in grade school and high school, one of my friends' father was actually a grave digger out here in our local cemetery, and they actually dug the graves by hand. I mean, they actually used a shovel and dug the graves. Well, he had the assignment or the task of moving some old graves from the old section of the cemetery that they didn't think were buried right, and they wanted to move them to a new spot and give them a new burial because they were buried in the old wooden caskets and they were falling apart, and it was starting to fall in and stuff. So we were out there visiting his dad while he's digging the graves, and he pulled out a child's skull, and it still had skin and hair and everything on it. It was kind of leathery and looking. I didn't hold it or anything. I just saw it, but it was pretty well preserved for the time. And these were ones graves from the 1800s. So
Uh,
this is the temporary vault that
that
they
was a
built.
temporary fault.
Yep, they
Yeah.
built that. He first went into the receiving vault when he first got there, and then after a certain amount of time, they built this while his final resting place was being built. So they built this one first on the side of the hill, and then up on top of the hill past this is where his final resting place is. So this would be his second resting place once he got to Springfield. Oops, went too far.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. We got a
So,
question in the chat room about
oh, what are they
vampires. It
saying?
says you do cut vampires with the heads of vampires have to be taken off. That's why Saint Dennis is the patron of vampire hunters. He had his head cut off. That's a long story. I'll get into it someday. But anyway, uh, they wouldn't have done Lincoln that way. He wasn't worried about him being a vampire. Go ahead, Joe.
So this is the actual
What you got
house.
here?
This is the Peterson room that where Lincoln passed away at. So this is the small. It's a pretty small
That's
room,
the
and they
room.
had
Yeah.
all those people in there. They had at least 13 people in there at one time while they were working on Lincoln. And this is supposedly the bed, but I think the original bed is in Chicago Museum. I think for some reason they sold off a lot of the stuff, so they replaced it as good as they could. There's still a lot of original stuff in this room, but I don't think this bed is the original. But
I
that's
got a
what the
quick
room.
story to tell about
Go ahead.
one that makes me think about that. They actually tore out a wall. You remember this, Gerald? They actually tore out the wall of the house and they found a dress in there. And it was the dress that the woman was wearing that got Lincoln's blood on it. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
They actually found that dress and it was still in very good shape. And it's in a museum now, too. And you still see the bloodstains on it. And I think it was one of the women there that was there in the box where he got shot. They had the blood on her. But she followed him to this house. You know, they took his body over there to that. And
I know his wife's cape is in Chicago Museum that has the blood on it still.
but this is the
Oops.
dress one of the women was wearing. I don't know.
Well, the one I'm talking about is her cape that she wore that night to the theater. So there might be two. There might be more than one piece of article of clothing that's in museums from that time. So this is the gentleman, Henry Stafford. He was the boarder that came out to the front door and told him to bring the body in here or bring the patient or whatever in because he thought there was just somebody that needed medical attention. So it was the closest place. So that is him, Henry Stafford. And this is the actual final resting place in Springfield. That's the monument and the actual tomb. And you can see his bust out in the front and the statues and, depicting the Civil War and all that with him and being a statesman or the president or lawyer up on top there. And then you got the pillar or the pylon going up.
That is a big, big building.
It is. It's huge inside even. And this is the route that they took from Washington, D.C. to Springfield.
Have you ever been there, Gerald?
I have been by there. I have never actually been to it itself, but I've been to Springfield many times. And like I said, I've been to Bloomington. I worked in Bloomington Normal for a while, so I was able to go to the house of the judge where he sat on the front porch and spent his evenings talking to the judge about law and current events. So this is the route they took from Washington, D.C. You can see they went from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, to Harrisburg, to Philadelphia, to New York, to Albany, to Buffalo, to Cleveland, to Columbus, to Indianapolis, to Michigan City, finally Chicago. Chicago wasn't even on the list. They added Chicago at the last minute before they went to Springfield. And
that's a long route.
It took 3 weeks to do this by train because each town they went because everybody wanted to pay their respects, and they had 24.
Well, I think they wanted a viewing.
They had 24-hour viewing of him, and the whole route, this whole train route had people in every town. They went through 400 cities all the way to Springfield. This railroad
and this
route.
train, Gerald, was decked out in all of the Victorian type mourning stuff. It had black ribbons on it. It had black wreaths and all this on it.
We got pictures of it.
Black flags flew from it. It was quite a sight to see.
Every small city or town they went to, all the farm people and the city people went out to the railroad tracks to pay their respect as the train would go by through their city. So this is probably one of the few times that the whole country, or at least along that route, everybody, because they posted the route ahead of time, where he was going to be in what city and what time and when he was going to be in lay and state. So this is the parlor room in the Peterson house where they took a president upstairs or into the bedroom, and this is where they kept his wife. So she had to stay in this room while he was up there getting worked on by the doctors, and while the men were deciding what to do with President Lincoln, and they did not involve Mrs. Lincoln at all. So she was down here in mourning by herself most
the
times.
Victorian type thing, back in the day, and this was in Victorian times, that women were thought to be very, fragile in areas of this, so they protected them a good deal. They thought they had to protect women from things like this.
Well,
So
obviously, she was distraught. She was very distraught. I mean, her husband was just shot right in front of her, and he's lying up there, and she doesn't know if he's alive or dead or going to make it. Or so they probably did handle all the decisions, because who knows what, in that state of mind, if you can handle that kind of pressure to decide life and death for somebody on what to do.
Yeah, she was a very kind of a fragile person emotionally anyway,
Right.
This had to be a very taxing time, absolutely, for her. A lot of people were surprised she held it together as well as she did.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing. I mean, let's see.
Yeah,
I think I got to close that one. What's that?
I said, give us a close up of that. That was pretty neat. That's how you can get a close up on things like that with with the photos. Yeah. I have to learn that technique from you one day, how to do that. Yeah. There you go.
You can zoom in almost on. Yeah. You can almost. I mean, it gets a little grainy on this old picture, but. Yeah. But you can see, and this is supposedly the exact room that they kept her in.
Yeah. Very Victorian looking.
Yeah, just by the mantle and the clock and the fireplace there. So I was trying to see.
There was do you remember, Gerald? Do you remember that? Do you remember that Twilight Zone episode where it's the professor from Gilligan's Island, by the way, and he goes back in time and he tries to warn Lincoln. Remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember that Twilight Zone episode?
Yep, I absolutely do.
And he comes to find out that nothing he could do would change the course of history, And at the end of the episode, he says he's going back and trying again, But it's almost as if it was set in precedent to happen that way, But there were so many different things that took place that night. It was almost as if it was planned in many ways. I'm talking about a bigger plan for everything in motion. And like the soldier, that left his post and went to go drink across the street in the bar, all these different factors that took place. It was almost like a setup, wasn't it, Jerome?
Yep, absolutely. So I have a couple more pictures that we haven't shown yet, and it has the trains and stuff in it. So this is actually going down the street, and here's the soldiers in the parade behind Lincoln's body, in the carriage.
That's the camouflage.
So you can see all the people on the side and all the people that are marching behind, and so it was a pretty big deal when they did this. And they did this in every city, 13 cities. They did this. We already showed this one.
I got a question. Russell Johnson was the one that played the professor on Gilligan's Island. Okay, very famous character actor. He's been in a lot of stuff. Okay, go ahead, Gerald. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Russell Johnson. Yeah. So you already showed this picture.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the one that we were talking about. This is the actual bed. That's the actual room right after they removed Lincoln's body.
Can you get a little bit? Can you get a little bit closer with that?
Yeah. What do you? Is there anything? Oops. Where'd it go? I lost it.
It looks like blood. It looks like blood stains on the bed. There is it.
Yeah, hang on. Let me
picture after. Mm-hmm.
I lost the picture for a second. Hang on. So what I'm not sure if all this could be blood.
Kind of
like
blood stains on it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's the pattern on a pillow, but it could be. But this is the picture that you were talking about. That they just removed Lincoln's body, and he took a picture of the bed, the actual deathbed.
That's one thing that puzzles me. You know, they had the ability to take photographs. Why wasn't it documented better? You know, they just did not seem to have the mind or the presence to do that. I don't know why, but I would have took hundreds of pictures if I could have been able to do that. You know, and they could have done that easily. I would have took a whole lot more pictures of everything. You know, for posterity. And you know what was the very final words that they said when he died? He now belongs to the ages. You know, they had a grasp on the historical part of it. Why didn't they take pictures, more pictures? You know what I mean?
Right.
Look at that thing. That coach is sticked out. That's very Victorian with the black feathers and the flags and all that.
So I'm not sure if each city had one or they took this with them on the train also. I've never found that out. I don't know, because each city, they took them off the train, put them in these wagons or these hearses, however you want to call them at the time, and parade him, you know, have the parade down the street till he got to his viewing spot. So I don't know if this was just one and it was on the train with them the whole time and they took it unloaded every time they went to one of the cities, or if each city was supposed to provide this.
Well, you know,
this is the one from Washington, D.C.
You know, the very famous camouflage was kept that they carried his casket with, and it was used for Kennedy and several other presidents who, you know, when they died. It is still in use to this day.
So this is the one that they used in Washington, D.C. I know that for sure. That's where this picture came from the archives there. And as you can see, it's very ornamented.
I think that's a local. It's probably a local hearse. You know what I mean?
Very high polished and a lot of ornamentation on it.
And it doesn't look like a restoration.
No. And that's the death mask. That's that picture. We're not sure where it came from or there's the monument. There is the car. So they had several cars on this train, and this is the one where the body was in as they transport it. You can see the soldiers guarding it. But there was 300 people on this train. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm.
300 people on this
Yeah, there
train.
were a lot of dignitaries. Yeah, they rode on there.
Yep. I mean, they picked up
Uh,
people. They picked up people on the way. You know, governors and mayors and people. You know, that were very prominent and part of Lincoln's history. Jumped on the train as they went through the town, so they picked up a lot of people also.
the one of the oldest photographs ever taken, one of the original photographs. I've actually seen it. I can't remember exactly the year, but it was like 1830 or 1840, something like that. I think it was in the 1840s. This was the first actual photograph, and it was taken of a roof in France, roof of a small village. Um, it's very interesting. I think it was like 1841, I want to think, or 1836, somewhere along in there. It wasn't very many years after the Alamo, actually. That's how far back that goes. And by the way, there was a photograph taken of the Alamo like maybe 6 years after the battle. I
Wow.
have seen it, a very old daguerreotype. So there was a way. I mean, in Lincoln's time, there was definitely photographs as you see here. I mean, why didn't they take more? That's the interesting question I have. You know,
And there might have. I mean, I'm assuming there might be more photographs. They might be hidden away, tucked away
I think a
somewhere.
lot of them were lost. You know,
Right.
over time.
So this is
Man, they found, not long ago, they found I remember reading about this. They found an old, that was out behind somebody's house. It was an old greenhouse, and it had glass in it, and the glass were daguerreotypes. Somebody got a bunch of old daguerreotypes, and they were Civil War photographs.
wow.
Yeah. And they talked about that they had faded, but not very badly. You could still see the images on them and everything. And you would think of all places you'd come up on, but that's why they were very dispensable with them. They didn't think that much. They just did not have a grasp on history that we do. That's the way it goes.
So this is at the railroad station in Springfield, Illinois. They built this arch and gateway for the train to come in and for the hearse to travel through for the parade to his final resting place, or his viewing actually. So this is what, so there's the hearse so I guess that's not the same one that we saw earlier. So evidently they had hearses different for each city, because that
It
doesn't
might have
look like the
been, yeah.
same one we showed earlier. But they built this great big archway
They
across the
built that
street,
arch.
across the street and the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the engine, there's the train, and they had Lincoln's picture on the front of it, and they called it the Lincoln Special, and it had all kinds of chrome and polish, and they had right here you can see like the wreath for flowers on the front of the train. They had ribbons, and the boiler was all shined up. And I wish I knew who these gentlemen were, though. I don't know who any of these gentlemen are.
I love looking at the old photographs. It's like a time machine.
It's nice that somehow we got really nice copies of them too. I mean, when you zoom in on some of these, they still hold some of their quality.
A lot of photographs have been restored, Gerald. A lot of restoration that goes on because they are historical artifacts. So
I
just
don't
like
know.
a lot of the old people, they're cleaning them and restoring them. To a certain extent, a lot of these images.
I don't know. Some of these could be generals or military, and some of them could be governors or statesmen. Yeah. Politicians, I'm sure, were mixed into these pictures. And
that's fascinating. So that train, was that the train there?
Yep. So that's the actual car like we showed a couple different pictures that showed it, but this was a close up. This is the actual car where Lincoln's body was held en route all the way through the whole route. And like I said, it took 3 weeks to get to Springfield from Washington, and they went 1,654 miles, and they stopped off at 13 cities along the route. Oh, there's somebody in a window.
No, this is not Photoshop. When you restore a photo, you just sort of clarify it. You clear it up if it's got a lot of bad, parts on it. But it's not Photoshop, not really.
No,
in that respect, yeah. You're not changing the image. You're just trying to clean it up.
But I don't know if you guys can see that. There's faces in these windows looking out.
Oh yeah. Like I said, that was something. If you got a seat on that train, you were quite a dignitary, like a mayor or a governor or something like that.
Then that's the big bronze.
Didn't make a t-shirt for the show, for the tour. No, I don't think you got a t-shirt on that one.
So this is inside the tomb, his final resting place in Springfield, Illinois. There's the big statue of him sitting in the chair in the big rotunda.
We gotta remember something, girl. This was the first president ever assassinated, right? So this was a big thing to them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In that respect.
So this is the temporary. So you had the receiving one, which was that old yellow picture I showed earlier. And this is actually the temporary one that they built in the side of the hill. And right up here at the top, you can see the tower on his one that they are finishing. So they had him laying here. They had him laying in there until they got the main one built.
Head Trip said that Kennedy didn't even have that big to do. How can you go on 3-week tour? And I said, well, this was the Victorian age. They sort of romanticized death and romanticized this kind of thing going on. They went way overboard. If you read a lot of the Victorian writings and stuff, it's very flowery. It's very hard to read. They're very romanticized with everything. It went way overboard with it, to a certain degree, to the point where it got, overkill very quickly. But that's just the way they saw things. That's the way they dealt with things, and that's the way they saw life and death.
So I think we've seen all these pictures. That's it. I think for the pictures.
That's fascinating stuff. Like I say, I love to look at the old pictures because that's just like a time machine. We can't have a time machine. This is the next best thing to it, okay? I love looking at old pictures. Pictures, they tell you the story of what went on, And I told that about a lot of times going out in cemeteries. And people need to go into cemeteries more and look at some of the tombstones and read them because there is pages of history. And you don't need to lose that. You need to indulge that every now and then and get that grasp on history that you need to. Absolutely, because that's what history is all about. You are history, and history is you, no matter which way you look at it.
I'll have to show the picture of the tombstone in the article that was written about one of my relatives from here, from our county, that died in the Civil War, and they have a great big giant inscription on his tombstone, and I have it all written down, and this actually has been in the newspapers and a couple books.
It's like reading a newspaper article, isn't it?
Yep.
I have read a lot of tombstones like that. I don't want to die once we die. Who does your history? Well, every story, that's why I say no story should be lost to history. No matter what that story is. People need to write things down. They need to record things. because your memories one day may not be there if you want them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's the way that goes. But we will one day become history. Old, dusty, musty history.
Yep.
And we
Exactly.
will be forgotten. That's the way, here's the bad thing about it, and I tell people this: you may be remembered for the next couple of generations, but after that, you're just a story, maybe a picture in a book, just for somebody to wonder about, maybe, but that's it. You're not going to be thought about anymore. You're not going to be, you know,
I
commemorated
spent
in that way.
I
That's the
spent
way time
three
is, though. That's the way time and age marches past us. Tempest fugit. Time flies, and no man's the master of time. We are all subject to it. And Cryptid Hunter says that's a good reason why to write an autobiography. Absolutely, that's a good reason why people need to write stuff down. You need to have a diary. You need to put your thoughts down. At least you will have some kind of link with the generation to come, and they will have a link to the generation before them. That's good that way. No story should ever be lost to history.
right.
Includes historical stories, definitely.
I spent 3 summers while I was doing my genealogy on my family, going to the graveyards and cemeteries and taking pictures and stuff and writing down the dates and the names. And I went with a gentleman from the historical society. We went all across the whole county to every known cemetery and ones that were suspected cemeteries out in farm fields and in trees and forests. And so we wrote down every name and every birth and death that we could find. So I have a whole big spiral notebook upstairs of every death in Marshall County up to a certain date anyway that we went and wrote down all the information.
That's very true. My grandmother, who was born in the Victorian age, by the way, saw the very first airplane, and yet lived to see men walk on the moon. That's amazing in one lifetime to think about. And then my other grandmother was born the very same year that Jack the Ripper was killing people in London, England.
Wow.
So we have a link to history, whether we know it or not, in many aspects. We need to recognize that. Absolutely. My 20th, see, let me read it. Oh, here. My 28-year-old daughter died of a heart attack. She was very ill with rheumatoid. Rheumatoid, yeah. We found her lying down in a blood had pooled to the bottom of her body. She had to be cremated. That's sad, definitely. That's how time does our bodies, definitely. And certain circumstances will do that too. Um, that's the way it goes with nature. I've often said that if I've had a lot of people ask that question all the time. How come we haven't found Dogman bones, or we haven't found Bigfoot bones and all that stuff? Well, I think one reason, especially with the Bigfoot bones, that they bury their dead. And I believe they hide their dead. But if you leave something out in the woods on a hot summer day for at least a couple of weeks, it's not going to be a whole lot of it left. That's just the way nature works, folks. Nature has got a plan that goes into action to get rid of these organisms that are dead, that die, and that includes you and I. We would be the same way too. There are certain insects. I'm not going to get into this because it's a very morbid subject, okay? But there are certain insects that are almost like built to take care of the human body in these circumstances.
Absolutely.
And I have seen what you look like after you've been in the ground for about 4 years. Okay? Trust me, you're not going to last that long, even in burial vaults. Okay? That's just the way that goes. And that's why you have the Egyptian mummies all these thousands of years later. You would not have them in certain areas of this world. Egypt is very dry and dusty and perfect place for a mummy. Okay? But there are other places in this world, hot and humid places, that this thing ain't gonna work. That's just the way that goes. But there are certain insects that take care of the bodies. We'll have to
Right.
do a show on that one night, Gerald. Anyway,
Do
but
you
there are
know?
certain insects that
Did you know that the
there's things that do certain things with the skin. There's certain things that do certain things with the hair and the nail follicles and on and on and on. Nature has a way of taking care of nature, and that's the bottom line on that.
did you know that the FBI forensic department has a cemetery or plot of land where they lay bodies in different states from freshly killed to decomposed so they can study it and be able to tell when they go to a crime scene, they can tell how long the body has been.
They can tell, girl, how long you've been dead by how long it takes a fly to hatch out of you. Okay, they know the lifespan of a fly. And yeah, I don't know if people out there know this, but flies come from maggots. Okay, the original larva form of maggots that eat dead meat. Okay, and they know exactly how long it takes for a fly to hatch out of a maggot, and for how long how old the fly is. They take that and tell precisely the age of death on someone. Did you know that?
Yeah. I was just getting ready to tell you what that cemetery at the FBI does. They have it from laying out a body laying out in it. So these aren't in caskets or buried. They're laying out in the elements. Some of them are buried. Some of them are in plastic. Some of them are 6 feet under. Some of them are 3 feet under, 2 feet, 1 feet. So they can have an idea on whatever situation they come across. They can tell what's going on with that body when they find it out on an investigation.
And what did Poe call the maggots? What is the name of the maggot? The conqueror worm, because it wins in the end. The conqueror worm. But in the forensic laboratories, you do not want the flies to get on you, okay? Because that's what they've come off of. That's what they're doing in the lab, all right? The flies, eventually they watch them and then they get away from them. They get out of the containers. But anyway, that's what they're there for. It's a smart way of doing it. Agreed. Maggots don't like McDonald's, though. No, they won't. I'll tell you what, do not eat something bugs won't touch. That's not a good idea. If bugs will not eat it, you might not better eat it either, okay? That's just the way that goes. But there, I think I sent a thing to the cryptid hunters the other day about fake food. People are encountering food that does not act right. They had like watermelon and it wouldn't break, and they had a banana and you couldn't break it. What's going on? Our food is being synthesized. That's what's
Right.
going on.
Yep.
Yeah. And meat's the same way. They're going to start synthesizing meat. They're already doing it. Definitely. And here's the number one ingredient on some of that stuff. I can't think of the name of it, but it's really nothing but ground up bugs.
Well,
I think one of the red dyes is that. You remember that, Gerald? One of the red dyes that they use is ground up bugs.
Absolutely. I was just getting ready to tell you that if you grind up that amoeba or that insect and you put it in water, it turns the water red, and that's how they get the natural food coloring. They have it for every color. So if you go to a natural food and it has coloring in it, there's chances are that you're eating insects anyway.
And it is take care of funeral costs. You can donate your body to science. And
Absolutely.
there you go. Anyway, what's the name of that candy? It comes in all different rainbow colors. What's the name of it? Oh, no, I can't think of it.
Skittles?
Skittles, yeah. You got bugs in your Skittles, folks. Okay. Bug juice. Not beetle juice, bug juice. Okay. For entertainment purposes only, Shiraz says. Absolutely. Okay. Let's make that statement now. But anyway. But that's what, I don't know. What's coming down the line, what we're going to be consuming. I'm going to tell you what. I did not see how you could live Some people do, but I just do not can see how you could live on McDonald's, okay, or Burger King. I'm not going to pick on one person. I pick on them both. How could you live on that? I just don't see. I mean, how you could do. Here's the thing about fast food, Earl. Okay, and I'm not going to get on this tonight because it's got nothing to do with Lincoln. But anyway, uh, the interesting thing about this is that the McDonald's food is not real to me. Okay. And here's the thing about fast food. We only go with fast food because of one reason and one reason only. It's convenient.
Right.
We don't want to go in the kitchen and fix our own food, or we don't want to go home and fix it. We want to go ahead and get it now. I need it right now. And what we're doing is we're falling victim to our hunger in the wrong way. Okay. Because it's convenient. That's the way it goes. But anyway, that's life in the 21st century.
That is.
I'll tell you something about Starbucks. I don't know. I mean, I've tried to like Starbucks over the years. There isn't a whole lot in it. Now, their coffee is terrible, though. Their coffee. That's one thing I can say about McDonald's. It has reasonably good coffee. Reasonably good, Starbucks just don't do it for me. I don't know. It's just overrated and overpriced to me. Of course, I don't go in for the coconut milk lattes or whatever it is they're drinking in there. I don't go for that. No mud bugs for me, especially when I worked the fish station. Oh, Lord. Mud bugs, yeah, I remember those. But anyway.
Yep.
I like Black Rifle coffee. Mr. Moon says, "Oh yeah, that sounds interesting." Yeah, I'm not a big coffee drinker. I like a cup of coffee a day. That's about it.
Well, I think Black Rifle is a veterans-run coffee company.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to support veterans.
Well, do you have anything more on Lincoln? I think I'm out as far as pictures and I know you can come to Illinois and Springfield and see the largest statue of Abraham Lincoln. They have him straddling. They have him straddling the interstate.
I got a plug here for Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Okay. How come nobody sends me stuff for plugging their things? Oh, Joe, what's going on with that?
I know.
Sending me cases of stuff here.
We need some sponsors.
Yeah. But anyway, this has been a fascinating thing, This has been sort of a stroll down history lane. And might be giving some people to go steal famous people's bodies. I don't know, but you never know what some people are up to. That's the way it goes. But if there's money in it, they'll do it. That's the way the world turns, folks. No matter what that is, that's what they'll do it for. Money. So what we got here is Dennis Carroll, Jimmy Church of Fade and Black Radio, sponsor River Moon Coffee. Oh yeah, Fade and Black blend, smoky dark roast. Okay. Might have to start putting a coffee commercial in here. Yeah.
There you go. You can, you can get a hold of a company and start your own brand. You can have Hunting the Shadows, dark roast or something.
Oh yeah.
They put it in the bags and even sell it for you.
Oh yeah, tomorrow night I will be on William Nighthawk's Christmas special. He invited me on there to read the Christmas story. I will be reading that on his special tomorrow night. And that will be at 8 o'clock p.m., I think.
I found a Christmas poem from Icelandic folklore about the Yule cat. Really good.
Oh, yeah,
poem.
the Yule cat. Yeah.
Really good poem.
Yeah, the Yule cat. That's very interesting. If you don't wear certain clothes, the Yule cat will get you. You don't wear your Christmas clothes.
Yep.
Well, that's a lot of those. I've got a matter of fact. I'm reading a book right now. It's got nothing with the dark legends of Christmas in it. I'm going to probably have to do a show on that one night, girl. Anyway, there's some wild stuff out there. Supposedly around Christmas, not just Krampus. Krampus might be the good guy, okay? Considering some of these other things.
There's some pretty bad ones out there.
Ooh, I sent that to Jessica about that Frog Persia. If she catches you out on Christmas night, will cut your stomach open and stuff your back full of straw. Real nice gal.
The Christmas Witch.
Mm-hmm. I think that's Italian, if I'm not mistaken.
It is Italian.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to hit the new comments thing. There we go. All right. Tales of Krampus, the Grinch, Bell Snickle, yeah. Black Peter, he catches you, he'll row you in a boat over to Spain and make you work in the coal mines the rest of your life.
Oh.
And Crystal says that we had a wonderful show tonight with Dennis and Gerald. Thanks for sharing all this awesome pictures. Well, you're quite welcome. The thanks go to Gerald. He had most pictures. And he's my picture getter, by the way. He knows how to go after those pictures. He's very good at research. You're hired, girl.
I'm hired? All right.
You're hired.
Thank you.
Not fired, you're hired. Okay. All right. Well, it's been a good, interesting evening. You got any last thoughts on Mr. Lincoln?
Just just the interesting life that he led, like I said, from his early years, learning how to read and arithmetic in the cabin with a candlelight and a fire, and then traveling all the way to Bloomington and being a rail splitter and a spokesman and a lawyer all the way to president. Then even his death was unusual. This is an amazing life. This is an amazing thing to study in history.
And like they said at the deathbed, he now belongs to the ages, and that is where history goes, my friends. And it's very interesting. Abraham Lincoln was a very interesting character. I would love to have talked paranormal shop with him a little bit. That would have been interesting, absolutely. Especially with his wife, too, for that matter. That would have been an interesting conversation to have. But I would love to see the ghost of Lincoln at the way to the White House. That would be number one on my list. I've always wanted to investigate the White House. But by the way, the White House has a demon cat living in the basement. I don't know if you folks know about that, but there is a demon cat in the White House. Okay, yep. Not a demon rat, but a demon cat. Okay. Living in the White House, that's wild. And they see this cat every now and then. They talk about it. But anyway, here's Gerald's link to Midwest Night Watchers channel. Check it out. Show that guy some business, okay? Give him some business, all right?
Yeah,
and give him some subscriptions. Go check his store out. He's got a store. Yeah. He's got a store. Check it out, but I don't think he takes personal checks. Okay. Into the historical origin of the Dutch character Black Peter, huh? Oh, yeah, I'll check that out. Black Peter is very interesting. He hangs out with Krampus. Okay, absolutely. But anyway, yeah, go check out your old store. And he's looking for you to go shop, for some Christmas stuff there. Definitely check it out. And check out Midwest Night Watch's show this week. And see what keep an eye. Y'all need to keep an eye on Gerald for me, okay? I can't watch him all the time. Okay.
You never know where I'm going to show up. Like I said
I
last
need
night,
reports.
I was on
I
Brown Dwarf's show till about 1 in the morning or 12:30 or something. I don't remember.
Oh yeah, you like the late hours here. I'm a night owl myself. There you go. But anyway, we appreciate your business there, and we and your support, and for watching us. We thank you for that, and for sticking with us tonight as we explore the mysteries of Lincoln. And I think it's been interesting. I hope we've stretched your horizons a little bit tonight. And you got any last words there, Drew?
No, just everybody stay safe, and I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. In case I don't see you guys, I'm sure I will, because I'm always on somewhere, whether it's Dennis, our channel, or every once in a while you can even catch me on Cryptid Huntress.
All right, and also check us out, Hunting the Shadows Wednesday night. I'll have Brian Minnick here from Strange Montauk. We're going to see what we can get into there. It should be very interesting. So plan your calendar to check that out. Okay, that's this Wednesday night at 9:00 p.m. on Eastern Standard Time on Hunting the Shadows. Okay, and Paranormal Point of View Friday night. We'll be doing some book reviews. I'm going to be talking about some more interesting stuff then. So catch us then as well. All the shows are at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Hunting the Shadows YouTube podcast channel. Okay, you have been made aware, so
That's right.
So be there. Okay, all right, and appreciate your support for you watching us and for journeying down the road less traveled with us. Okay, and we'll see what we'll come up with for you next week. And until then, want to tell you all to, of course, hold on to the light, okay? And keep your vibrations high. Watch your six. Keep your head on a swivel while you're out there. Hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. And we'll see you Wednesday, if not, God willing, and the creeks don't rise, okay? And until then, Godspeed, my friends. Adios.